In the 2010s, Sylvester Stallone assembled a group of aging action stars for a ridiculous, blood-soaked throwback movie, The Expendables, which became so successful it spawned an entire trilogy. And you can't put together a group of the greatest approaching their expiration date action legends without the greatest action legend of all time, Arnold Schwarzenegger. Let's take a look back at Arnold's role in the Expendables trilogy. Hello friends, and welcome back to Every Arnold Movie Ever, episode 31, bonus episode, Expendables episode. Back in 2006, Sylvester Stallone's career was flagging. It had been 9 years since his dramatic turn in Copland, something that should have revitalized his career, but turned out to be simply an anomaly. A series of subpar films like the Get Carter remake, Driven, and Avenging Angelo had him teetering on the edge of direct-to-video. By 2005, he was guest starring in the TV show Las Vegas, and possibly out of desperation, went back to the well of his most famous character, Rocky Balboa. For Rocky Balboa. And not only was that movie pretty damn good and a slate cleaner for the franchise after the entertainingly abysmal Rocky V, it also put Stallone back in the zeitgeist. And he gives a great speech to his son about facing adversity.
It ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done.
So he figured, why stop there? I'll dust off my other big character. And in 2008, he released Rambo, about Rambo, a sadistically violent movie that takes pleasure in shredding bodies to bloody bits with high-caliber bullets. I liked it at the time, but I recently tried to show it to some friends and I hyped it up. It was like, oh, it's this crazy, bloody good time. And totally backfired. They did not find the exploding bodies all that fun. And maybe thought there was something wrong with me. Riding high off the success of those two movies, Stallone wanted to ride that wave of nostalgia a little bit longer, wanted to parlay that goodwill for the gratuitous 80s action genre he helped create into a brand new franchise. So he assembled a large cast of aging action stars and mixed in a few more current up-and-comers and created The Expendables, a franchise that, well, mostly takes place in the cockpit of a plane.
Yeah.
Electra's got to. The girl!
Dodge!
Lots of cock talk in these movies. It also has the distinction of christening my man Jason Stratham with one of his most ridiculous character names of his entire career, Ali motherfucking Christmas. Now, the basic premise is that a group of mercenaries take on impossible jobs no one else will, under the idea that they're soulless losers with no love or family or friends outside of their coworkers who also happen to be broken and bonded by trauma, driven only by money and the thrill of murder or the prospect of suffering a horrific death. Very relatable stuff. And before I get into the Expendables, I did make a video for this way back in 2010, and the premise of that was that I did a bunch of things to become more manly, but essentially I just concussed myself. Face punch! Chair shot! Chair shot! Schwarzenegger! Now, the first movie mainly revolves around Barney Ross and Lee Christmas's adventures as Expendables, hired by the CIA to overthrow a puppet dictator in the fictitious country of Velena. Now, since this is a throwback to the 80s, they missed a golden opportunity to go to Valverde, the fake country used in Commando and Die Hard 2 and Kinda Sorta Predator. The rest of the Expendables show up as bookends and provide the most violent scenes, and we get a couple scenes with Mickey Rourke as a tattoo artist, and his two major scenes are wild. The first one seems like he completely misplaced his script.
Why don't you let me doodle like a, I don't know, a Charlotte's Web on your head. I could put a web on the top of the head and very sexy. You understand?
And the second one is a complete 180 from that, where he just gives this flat out incredible performance.
I see this woman standing there, you know. She looked at me, and I knew she was gonna jump. You know what I did, man? I just turned around and I kept walking. After taking all them lives, if I'd have saved that woman, I might have, saved what was left of my soul, you know?
Has no business being in this movie and is basically the key to Sly's character motivation and does it better in 2 minutes than anything Stallone does in the remaining 88 minutes. I forgot it was in there and it shocked me how good it was. But for the most part, the dialogue reminds me of the stuff I put in my Predator script I wrote when I was 10.
How many men you got? Just your mother!
In fact, Arboreal Oreo said the Expendables felt like watching a school play, and to hear the tin-eared dialogue, it's absolutely accurate.
Who sent you? Your hairdresser.
Like, there's all this banter done in the cadence of witty barbs back and forth, but it's rarely witty or funny.
When's the last time you saw your analyst?
This morning.
Yeah, what'd you talk about?
Avoidant personality disorder.
You think too much.
You're an unusual guy, and you're always gonna have unusual problems, right?
You're talking about my ear.
And sometimes borderline incoherent.
Your insides are gonna be like fucking mush.
Well, I did, sir.
Which brings us to Arnold's role. Arnold was still governor at the time of filming, so it wasn't possible for him to have a large part in this. Originally, he was offered Bruce Willis's part of Mr. Church, but he opted for the role of Trench, a competitor to Barney Ross who comes in to hear about the job in a one-scene cameo fashioned to get Stallone, Willis, and Schwarzenegger in the same scene. Now, even though he shot it while in office, it ended up being his first film appearance since leaving Sacramento as governor in 2009. It happens 20 minutes in, and it is utterly pointless. If Arnold wasn't in this scene, it would operate essentially the exact same way. Church would just give the assignment to Barney rather than seeing if Trench was interested in bidding for it. But Trench drops out immediately. He doesn't even put up a fight.
I'm busy anyway, so give this job to my friend here.
There's never a question whether Barney will take this job. But I'm stupidly looking at it from a story perspective, and that's on me. Obviously, there is a visceral thrill in seeing these three icons together at the same time, and it's fun because of the surprise element of Arnold.
I'm still waiting for one more guy.
Who?
He also gets a couple good digs in here on Sly.
What are you doing? Praying for Rourke? Have you been sick? You lost weight? Only an idiot would do this job.
How much?
No, like I said.
But the batting average for this scene is extremely low. There are a lot of clunkers in here.
Whatever weight I lost, you found, pal.
You should read more.
Thanks.
It's his fucking problem.
He wants to be president.
Especially this exchange. First, Arnold gets in a cute Rambo reference.
He loves playing in the jungle.
Which is fun, even though everyone's ignoring the fact that Arnold was in Predator, which takes place mostly in a jungle. But then this happens.
Right? Right. That's right.
And like, why is Bruce Willis just repeating the lines? It adds nothing to it.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Just like this part.
You guys aren't gonna start sucking each other's dicks, are you?
I don't know. I don't know what's going on.
Why don't we have dinner?
Sure, when?
In 1,000 years.
Too soon.
Real humans don't interact like this. It's very bizarre and very Stallone. But honestly, the whole movie's like that. It's kind of Stallone's thing in action movies like this. You'll find these same stilted, awkward exchanges in Demolition Man, and especially Tango and Cash.
And don't flatter yourself, Pee-wee.
I don't know you that well. Don't worry, Cash. Someday the other one will drop.
Attaboy, tripod.
Sure thing, Minnie Mouse.
And yet, for all the jokes, no one's thought to joke about Trench's absurdly baggy pants. Despite all that, it's a fun, gimmicky scene in a silly, gimmicky movie. And audiences took the bait, because the first Expendables cracked 100 million in the US and grossed 274 worldwide. It was a hit, which meant we got Arnold's role here is expanded, and it has the distinction of being not only his first true role post-governor, but also the first movie to be released after the 2011 revelation that he fathered a secret child back in 1996 with his housekeeper. Oy. How that information didn't get out years before he was running for governor is shocking. But perhaps even more shocking is his hairstyle. Spikes! Not as bad as Around the World in 80 Days, but pretty close. So, 2012 was not a great year for Arnold's reputation, and that certainly affected his box office performances moving forward, as we'll see with The Last Stand in 2013. But, as a fan at the time, I was still curious to see what Arnold's first project would be post-governor. It felt like Now that he was aging out of the action genre, it was an opportunity for him to showcase his acting skills and take on more interesting roles with some depth. It would take us a while to get there, though, and I think he made a mistake to come back for this sequel to basically blend into the background. In his book, Arnold says he was happy to not be the main star for his first project back because it helped him get his sea legs back. But I feel like it diminished his star power and the anticipation of his return, as much as people were anticipating it after the scandals. Trench shows up at the end of the first sequence. He's a MacGuffin for the opening rescue.
Trench?
Oh, this is embarrassing. I need a weapon. Something big. Yours!
If I don't get this back, your ass is terminated.
In your dreams.
And then he disappears for an hour and 15 minutes. And when he returns, he saves the Expendables from certain death by driving a machine reminiscent of Benny from Total Recall. And then he trots out the most obvious play on his most popular catchphrase.
I'm back!
So obvious, he did it 9 years prior.
I'm back.
And just in case you didn't get it, they tack on a nod to the Terminator theme.
I'm back!
From that point on, he's just part of the team trying to take down Jean Valjean, played by Jean-Claude Van Damme. Van Damme kills the only actually expendable, played by Other Hemsworth.
Are you afraid of me? No, I'm not. You should be.
And let's not paper over the fact that the Expendables 2 gets away with naming their big bad, Gene Villain. Then, just 5 minutes after Trench says,
I'm back!
He hits us with the pure uncut catchphrase,
I'm almost out. I'll be back.
which prompts a snarky response from Willis.
You've been back enough. I'll be back.
And that's basically the exact same cadence as T3 when Arnold said,
She'll be back.
and then doubled down with,
I'm back.
really loses its impact, then gets watered down even more with Bruce mocking it. Then, for good measure, they decide to fuck with Bruce's catchphrase too.
I'll be back.
Yippee-ki-yay.
And just emptying the catchphrase chamber to the point where they barely elicit anything beyond like a nod of recognition from the audience. It's like,
I'll be back.
I'll be back.
yeah, I remember.
Yippee-ki-yay.
Yeah, remember he said this. It's from the Die Hard movie. I mean, every line Arnold has here is a meta reference. I don't even understand this one.
Who is next? Rambo?
Because, like, Rambo's already in the movie. It would have made more sense if he said, who's next? Dirty Harry? And that would have worked on two levels. One, you get a reference to Clint Eastwood, but two, and more importantly, you get Arnold saying Harry. A more inspired moment is when they need transportation and Church shows up in a smart car.
Church! Get in!
Good visual gag. And a play on Arnold infamously driving a Hummer, and it provides Arnold with his funniest line.
Your shoe is bigger than this car.
Then Trench gets one last scene where Bruce Willis once again just repeats what other people are saying.
Nice touch.
It is a nice touch.
And Arnold waits around until it's his turn to get one last line.
That thing belongs in a museum.
We all do.
Arnold's sequences here are entertaining but slight, and he seems like he's shaking off the rust, like he really over-delivers his lines.
I need a weapon. Something big. Yours!
He's basically playing the hits here, nothing new, no character development or motivation. He shows up, does some bits, some gunplay, and he's on his way. I think, actually, his return at the end of the movie would have been much cooler if that was his first appearance here, because it is like a cool big moment.
I'm back!
But after that, again, he just kind of blends in with the team. Now, the movie itself, it's kind of a mess. Watching these back to back to back, you realize like just how beige and colorless they are outside of like the blood spurts. Any of the interesting character stuff from the first one is sanded down. All the jokes are like way more stilted and forced and, again, barely coherent.
You want to man up? I'll man you up.
Everyone still acts like me and my friends did in the dumb movies we made in high school, which I guess were inspired by 80s movies, but like the final showdown with Gene Villain and Barney is almost identical to something I made when I was like 15.
You want to kill me like a man?
I can kill you.
Or you want to kill me like a sheep?
Good, but I got a gun too. Put my gun down now. Stupid, but definitely noble.
Man or sheep?
But I will say it's fun to watch Van Damme Van Ham it up. He outshines all the newcomers, including Chuck Norris, who just memes his way through this movie.
You were bitten by a king cobra?
Yeah, I was. But after 5 days of agonizing pain, the cobra died.
And it's probably not a good sign for the franchise that I'm rooting for Gene Villain against Stallone in that final fight. And it turns out I was right, because not only does Stallone kill Gene Villain, he cuts his head off like a goddamn psycho.
Heads up.
That's the good guy in the movie? Box office-wise, the sequel did worse than the original in the US, but did better internationally, putting its gross over $314 million. Obviously, with this many stars, it was almost a guaranteed international hit, but it should have been concerning that people in America were suffering nostalgia overload. A sequel, of course, was going to be inevitable, but in an attempt to juice that box office, Expendables 3 came in with a PG-13 rating. Stallone thought it would expand their fan base, but an Expendables movie without blood is like a RoboCop movie without blood. It's like a Major League movie without swearing. It's like a Die Hard movie without the motherfucker. It's like anytime they try a PG-13 sequel to an R-rated movie. Now, this one came out in 2014, and at this point, Arnold had released The Last Stand and The Escape Plan, both in 2013. Those were supposed to be his big comeback vehicles, neither of which really made an impact at the box office, although Escape Plan was an international hit. I think Escape Plan probably would have held more appeal if it was the first time Arnold and Sly shared the screen together, which is another reason why I think Expendables 2 was a mistake. Even if he just did the cameo in the first one, the selling point of seeing those two team up after all these years would have held much more appeal. Now, like the other movies, this opens with a rescue mission, this time to grab former Expendable Wesley Snipes, who's actually pretty fun here.
So why'd you get locked away?
Tax evasion.
And there were two things that made me laugh really hard in the first 10 minutes. The first was this strange 30-second shot where the perspective is all screwed up, so it looks like the Expendables are flying in like a super tiny helicopter. Whee! Here we come! And the second was when Wesley Snipes cut his beard with this massive knife, and a minute later he had a hilariously close, perfect shave. And hey, we finally get some color in an Expendables movie. It's this bright red knob right here. Now, the awkward banter, which is now a hallmark of the franchise, goes next level in this one.
An agency spook.
Excuse me?
Agency official, relax.
I mean, the first line of dialogue is about Barney's goddamn lucky ring, which I forgot to mention before, but it's this running gag that runs headfirst into a brick wall. We never get the significance of the lucky ring, only that it's a ring and it's lucky. It is so incredibly silly and gigantic. And, you know, for a mercenary who's got to, like, really be quick on his feet and shooting a bunch of guns and stuff, seems like it would just get in the way.
Lucky ring.
Lucky ring.
This time around, the story is that the Expendables are finally too old for this shit. They fail to bring in former Expendable turned bad guy, portrayed by super great person Mel Gibson, who's stretching his acting abilities to play a villain here. And so Barney replaces his old team with a bunch of younger Expendables to try and finish the job. But that makes no sense, because his reasoning is that he doesn't want his old friends to die in combat, broken and alone.
The only way this thing ends is in a hole in the ground and no one giving a shit. But what I can't live with is taking you with me.
So he goes off and recruits a bunch of younger people to go die in combat, broken and alone. How is that any better? That's worse. He's a terrible person. Barney Ross is a piece of shit. Now, half of this movie is Barney and Kelsey Grammer recruiting the new team and going on a new mission, then failing that mission, and then he gets the new team caught, so he has to go save them, even though he hired them expressly because he didn't care about them and really didn't care if they died. So, I don't know, just a reason for the old Expendables to come back, and they add Antonio Banderas, who is the best new character, and maybe the best character of the series. He's a goofy weirdo who just wants some friends to talk to and some people to kill.
All I know what to do is killing people! And I do that very well!
Now, Arnold's role here is even more sporadic. He shows up to check on Terry Crews, who gets sidelined early, and it's immediately apparent that Arnold's shaken off the rust.
Is he gonna make it?
I don't know.
Who did this?
Stonebanks.
I thought you killed him.
He shot's easy to get back at me.
He's infinitely better here than anything he did in the first two movies. Then he disappears again until Barney needs a ride to track down Mel Gibson. Arnold actually gets some funny lines acknowledging that he's doing nothing in this movie.
I'm waiting.
Back is secured.
Hurry up. It's boring.
And then eventually Trench gets in the mix when he teams up with Han Solo himself, acting as Bruce Willis's replacement.
I'm supposed to meet a guy named Church.
You don't have to worry about Church anymore. He's out of the picture.
And this one did even worse than the second movie and closed the book on the Expendables franchise. Could have been because it was PG-13. Could have been because the movie leaked a week early. It also could have been just like people were fatigued from this stuff. And look, Arnold's acting is much better here, but he already exhausted the callbacks to his catchphrases in the first two movies. Well, almost all of them.
Good morning. Let's get to the chopper.
Now, is there something fun seeing him share the screen with Harrison Ford? There should be. They don't really interact that much.
I'm not even here.
Oh, nobody's here.
But without a compelling story or character motivation, it's fleeting. A cheap pop, as we say. Then again, this entire franchise is built on cheap pops. As evidenced in the appropriately eye-rolling ending when Sly paraphrases one of his most famous catchphrases.
What about the egg, huh? I am the egg.
Then Terry Crews gives him back his meaningless fucking ring, who gives a shit. And one final insult to Arnold's involvement in the movie, which I forgot about. He parrots what is, in my opinion, maybe the greatest catchphrase of his career for another cheap pop.
And you, I thought you retired.
I lied.
Good.
And that's The Expendables. Until the year 2023, a decade after the last one, when all the jokes were about how old everyone was, apparently now the world is preparing for the release of Expendables. But Expendables has one big difference. There's no Arnold. There's also very little Sly. Turns out this is Lee Christmas taking over Barney Ross's role as the leader and elder statesman. I don't know who asked for an Expendables 9 years after Expendables, especially since the Fast and Furious movies took up the mantle of collecting action stars, one of which is Statham himself. But here we are, Expendables. I shouldn't even be talking about it since it doesn't involve Arnold, but I kind of have to. Because somebody thought it was a good idea to call this movie Expendables. A 4 does not substitute for A, even though it kinda sorta looks like it. Come on! Arnold, you made the right call, buddy. So overall, it feels like Arnold's involvement in these movies is half-hearted. It started as a jokey surprise cameo, got expanded in the sequel so he could burn through his most popular catchphrases, and then made him feel extraneous in the second sequel, even though his acting was a little bit better.
If you guys wanted to fight, why didn't they just get married?
But it never feels like he's properly positioned as the biggest action star of all time. Probably because this is a Stallone movie, and Stallone feels like he's the biggest action star of all time. But Arnold here just becomes another guy, and that's the last thing you want from the Austrian oak. Alright, next up I'll return with season 4 of every Arnold movie ever by covering his post-governor career, starting with his first leading role since becoming governor in The Last Stand. See you then.
Okay.